I cannot click on YouTube to check things, and I don't have dual monitors, unfortunately, but I can check the chat right here. So hopefully, I hope a few people will show up, and let's start over from the beginning. Oh no. All right, here we go. I gotta get us back down to where we were. Where are we? Nope, nope, nope. I don't need any of that. Oh, that's great. That's just great. Let's see. Okay, we can take it from here, and I can get us caught up over here. Okay, my name's Trinity. Welcome to the stream. If something goes wrong with the sound, please put something in the chat, and I will look. My husband's saying the sound died again, and we don't know why. Great. Let's see if we can fix this. How about now? Let's see if you guys can hear me now. I have no idea. It takes a few minutes for it to catch up. So, sorry, we're working through the technical issues. We don't know why the sound goes in and out and in and out. And I have to wait a minute to let the lag catch up. As of right now, it looks like the only person viewing. Okay, all good. So we're all good now. Great. Let's start over. Okay, we can do this. Okie dokie. So, first, a disclaimer. This stream is not intended to make any political statements. This stream is not intended to harass or abuse anyone. This stream is not intended to make any kind of claims about what any individual person knew or did not know in the early days of the pandemic. This is just the facts as I experienced them, and the evidence that I have as I went along. Everything that's going to be in this stream it was all recorded as the things were happening. I archived everything on my Twitter feed, and I recently went back through so that I could kind of find stuff and we could take a look at what I had to say about it at the time it was happening. I did not get involved in the situation until late January, so one of the articles on my site goes through the early days, and we'll just skim through this a little to get an idea. We use the date of December 1st as the start date, but it could possibly be a week before that or a week after it or whatever. It's just the one we use when we're doing predictive models for numerical purposes. So, we were led to believe that the virus originated in the meat market, but many point to the Viral Institute, located nearby, and say it's a source. My stance on it always has been, regardless of where it came from, this is when the chain of events starts. Dr. Lee warns his friends and coworkers over Chinese social media that there was a form of pneumonia that was spreading in Wuhan. Sorry about any of the dinging there, people. My husband is somewhere else, and he's listening to the stream to make sure that everything sounds proper because of the sound issues we were having. I'm assuming it was my broken microphone. All right, December 31st. First case of viral pneumonia was reported to the World Health Organization. It is clear that this is not something that they have seen before, and concerns are quietly raised about this new mysterious virus. However, with a long and varied incubation period, this is all information we knew later. Infection of this individual could have been as early as 10 to 24 days before this. So, December 31st is when China told the World Health Organization that they had a new virus. January 1st, they ordered the market closed in China. January 3rd, Dr. Li was arrested, forced to sign a document retracting his warning regarding the virus, now known as the situation. In this, he had to admit that he spread false information. Okay, so I have since gotten new insight from people, directly from people in China, about all of this. So as it turns out, Dr. Li, first of all, was not a medical doctor. He was an optometrist, okay? He was not warning us. He warned his friends and family, and they in turn warned their friends and family, and it went viral, and that's how the warning got out. Take that however you will. It was not an intentional thing that he did. I also have found out since that the reason for the issue, and why he was arrested, yes, I mean, China definitely has some very strict censoring policies. I'm not saying they're not. Supposedly, and I'm saying I can't confirm this. This is something I have been told multiple times directly by people in China, that the reason he was actually arrested is because it is against the law to incite panic. And that in doing what he did, it caused a lot of people to flee the area and, in fact, even leave the country, which could have potentially helped to spread the infection. So that is the viewpoint, one viewpoint of some of the people in China. Now, there is, of course, the other viewpoint, and it's the one that our media in the US has definitely put forward, is that he warned the whole world and was a hero, and that he died for it. So, again, I'm not here to make up your minds for you. I'm just here to let you know what we know. January 7th, China tells the World Health Organization that the virus is not MERS or SARS, and they give it the new name SARS-CoV-2. January 7th, okay? So far, right, China is being really transparent. They're telling everybody everything in what I would consider a timely manner. January 9th, first person dies in China. We are led to believe they contracted the virus from the seafood market, and that the virus is not transmittable from person to person. It is unknown at this time whether officials in China yet knew this to be untrue. We don't know. Nobody can know that except them, whether they were lying or not in that particular case. But regardless of if they were lying at that point, on January 20th, they confirmed human-to-human transmission. This is very important to understand, though it may seem obvious that the virus had human-to-human transmission well before this point. Up until now, it was denied by not only China, but by the World Health Organization. When I particularly wrote this, I had a different view on certain things, less time to reflect on them. I wrote this back in March, I think. He's saying it's an out-and-out lie, it slowed global production, and led to an unknown amount of death. I don't know anymore about specifically that. I cannot say for certain that it was intentional. Considering the point where they said they thought that it was coming from infected meat, regardless of if they had been trying to lie before this point, okay, I want to make this part clear. From this date, from January 20th on, right, they told us everything about the virus. Everything. What happened, though, is they would tell us, and then the news media and our authorities would say that it wasn't true. They'd tell us it was a lie, and then we'd find out weeks and weeks later that it wasn't, that it was actually true. Now, this was key for me in early days, understanding the threat we were facing, because I knew that the virus had not been contained. Chinese New Year, millions of people traveling all over the world, points out all over the globe. There were 60,000 people tracked from Wuhan alone just using their cell phone signals. Unfortunately, what no one outside a handful of people might have known was the virus went with them. Up to this point, the public was still being told the virus could not spread from person to person. And I'm explaining, China had already admitted to that. We weren't being told. China had admitted to that already. This was deliberate, as the economy gains a massive boost from people traveling and celebrating Chinese New Year. And then this gets into the independent reporter Chen. begins reporting the situation in Wuhan. All public transportation is stopped from coming and going in and out of the city. It's now obvious that person-to-person infection is possible. We find out that it can be spread through close contact via droplet and is suspected to live on surfaces. So that's what we knew here. January 31st, President of the United States puts travel restrictions on foreign nationals entering the U.S. if they have been to China in the last 14 days. This is after a person in the U.S. is confirmed to have the virus, who did begin a campaign to get countries to keep transportation open to China, and says that closing transportation is racist, and many countries listened. Yeah, they really screwed some stuff up. They absolutely did. I also just want to make it clear, because this is something not everybody knew at the time, including myself, the travel ban did not apply to United States citizens. United States citizens were still able to, all the way through, go back and forth between China and the US. They were simply asked to self-quarantine for 14 days, but nobody checked up on them. Nobody made sure they did it. There was no real supervision. That was it. They had their temperature taken when they got off the plane. If they didn't have a fever, they were just set loose. So that is another important little piece of the puzzle of how we got here. February 2nd, the first COVID-19 death happens outside China. A man in the Philippines. Up till now, the virus has gone mostly unnoticed by the world at large. It is compared to being not as bad as the flu, as one person stated, a critical error that caused people to tune out and forget about the situation. Or, of course, as we heard, it's just a cold, bro. We heard a lot of that. February 3rd, World Health Organization states that travel restrictions were not needed to prevent the spread of the virus. Chinese ambassador to the UN used his statement to denounce certain countries, the U.S., who issued travel restrictions from China. The U.S. had restricted all foreign nationals who had been to China in the last 14 days from entering the U.S. At this time, WHO and China were continuing to use the narrative of racism to persuade countries to continue allowing open travel to and from the infected regions as well as China. Now, as far as that aspect goes, that is a 100% fact that the World Health Organization and that China did that. It was wrong, and it was a horrible thing that took place with them saying to keep it open. What I would like to state, however, is that the fact that other countries made the choice to listen, even continuing to listen, even as we're about to get into the stuff that starts to get heavy. February 4th, Diamond Princess cruise ship is docked in Japan, found to have 10 people infected. February 5th, myself and a research journalist start trying to warn the public. All right, so now we'll go to the direct documentation stuff. So from the previous stream I tried to run with all of the audio problems and having to start again, all of my material is slid all over the place, and I don't know where everything is. So let me see if I can get things put back in order here. Okay, well, I almost went past it. Get us back. We're February 24th, 22nd, February 18th, 16th, 12, 10, 5. Oops, nope, I'm in May again. May. Here, let me. Where is it? I know it's nearby. I'm sorry, you guys. Like I said, I did not expect the disaster we had on the first attempt of the live stream. So I am trying to find back where I was. Okay, we're in February again. Now I'll just scroll to get down. I'm eventually gonna edit this video down and put it into a series of shorter episodes on the channel so that it can be watched later. Nope, okay, so that was the bottom of it. There we go. Starts right here. So, February 5th. And these are my thoughts as of today, looking back on these things that I documented. So there's a little both of that. So my current thoughts. This, exactly this, we aren't... Oh, no, this one was on February 5th. Excuse me. This, exactly this. We aren't stupid. The info isn't adding up. If they want us to stay calm, they need to just come clean and tell us why China is doing what it's doing. Serious cognitive dissonance happening right now. And that was in regards to this comment. The problem with the virus is the gap in info. Governments tell us that it's no worse than the flu, but policy action on the ground shows us that they're preparing to deal with a disaster. The gap in info is concerning and suggesting that the truth is being concealed. Absolutely. Like I said, we saw that it was confirmed person-to-person transmission all the way back on January 20th. So that means wherever you live, if you live in the US knew it could spread person to person on January 20th, right? February 5th. Let's see. What I think a lot of people are forgetting is that even with the current numbers, this is a global catastrophe. The world turns on Chinese goods. The virus is on 5 continents, which it was by February 5th, and has a 2-week incubation period. We are running 2 weeks behind it. At this point, we were all being told that it could have an incubation period up to 14 days. That was what we were told and what we knew as of February 5th. But that info started changing. Yeah, me predicting NYC getting hit by the virus. There was a good reason for that. It seems almost inevitable that an outbreak will hit one of the U.S. major cities, a reminder to people to check their disaster preparedness without resorting to stockpiling. Calm but prepared is the way to go. New York is investigating 2 new possible cases. Both patients have symptoms and were recently in China. There are now tests pending for 4 people with negative results for a 5th. So I was looking at that and I was saying, well, if they found those, there's going to be people they didn't find. Me telling people to take on infection prevention protocols. Yep. So I was starting to get worried by around this date, so I decided that I wanted to help. This assessment based on the facts we have and simple math paint a truly horrifying picture. We need to do all that we can to slow the spread. Wash hands, sanitize commonly touched things. The front line of the defense is us. Take it seriously, and maybe it won't have to get that bad. That is heartbreaking to go back and read that when I wrote that. Because it was true. See, I knew that the virus was in the US because I knew about Chinese New Year. I knew that all of those citizens from Wuhan itself had flown all over the world. It didn't take a giant leap to know that we were infected. The infection was in the US. And of course, now, as of the date of this recording, it's been confirmed that, oh, gee, we had cases and we had deaths way, way before anybody acknowledged it. And everybody keeps acting like nobody could have known. That's a bunch of BS. If I knew, somebody else knew. Because all of my information comes from publicly available data. Oh yeah, there was this crazy rumor going around back then. It was a combination of racism and stupid that blew my mind. That this was something American citizens were saying to me when I was trying to warn them to take some extra precautions due to this virus, that only Asian people get this virus, or only Asian people can die from this virus. They based that assumption on literally nothing, but you would have been surprised at how much I heard it. It was mind-boggling. Okay. Yesterday, they flew into Newark, New Jersey from Hubei. Now we have a woman in quarantine in Newark. If there is an outbreak in New York or New Jersey from a United flight, this is on them. Why aren't we hearing about this on the news? I have heard of several suspected cases and even confirmed ones from other sources, but they aren't posting them on the virus counters. The date, February 6th. Looking at New York City. February 6th. This is a letter about 3M, specifically their N95 masks and other personal protective equipment, saying that there was a shortage. As expected, it's already starting to affect the global economy and trade. See, it's a really easy calculation. If people are either too sick or too scared to go to work, things don't get made. And the things that do get made don't have people to bring them from point A to point B. It's a really, really easy conclusion to come to. That if enough people are sick, locked down, or afraid of it, then everything grinds to a halt, and then you get shortages. That is where my head was at that point, and this was some proof. It was a letter. It's harder to read on my screen when I click into it, but let's see. What did 3M have to say? Dear valued 3M channel partner, this letter supplements our prior communications, meaning they warned the person before this, regarding the very high demand for 3M products resulting from the novel situation. This demand extends across multiple 3M personnel protective equipment and medical solutions products. But mainly they're talking about gloves, masks, and sanitizer. We have increased production and we are working with 3M customers, government agencies, and medical facilities to help meet end user demands. We have also implemented additional controls in our order fulfillment system that are intended to help promote broad product availability across all 3M products that both supports the public health and government response to I'm not supposed to say that word, and ensures product availability to our existing industrial and healthcare customers whose operations rely on our products. With regards to orders, blah, 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 blah. Point is, shortage of masks. Now, we also knew something that we also had, and now that I've got the sound system fixed, we might actually be able to hear it. Let's see, this is my website here, so give me a moment to get to the video section. Not sure if this particular video that I'm looking for, if I have it on my site or not. I have a couple of the important early videos archived, but no, that's not the one I'm looking for. Shoot. Doesn't look like I have it. You can look it up. It is when the director of health went before Congress asking for money to deal with the disaster, and they asked him about the national stockpile masks and how much we had, and his response was, well, we have 30 million. And the senator asked, well, how many do we need? And he says 300 million for just the first few months. And the whole room went quiet, and he says, so you're telling me we only have 10% of what we need? And he says, that is correct. That was a really, oh, crap moment for me. And as of course you can see, a precursor to that was what we just read right here. And that is February 6th. Please note that today is May 7th, and you still, as a citizen, can't buy a medical grade mask to save your life. And we still have many of our healthcare workers, my husband included, wearing cloth masks. It is the reason that I started studying to make the best cloth masks possible to protect people, because I kept waiting for someone else to take care of it, and it wasn't going to get done. Now, obviously, I know that I can't make enough to really make a dent in this, but each and every human life that you can affect in a positive way matters, and that is my personal philosophy in life. which is why I'm doing all of this, from working 16 hours a day, archiving, data mining, writing articles, making masks, doing videos, anything and everything I can think of to try and help other people through the situation, because, I mean, that's just what you do, right? This was not quite as relevant for the topic of the video, but it is important. Them finding out that the virus binds to the ACE2 receptors, which is the same receptors with HIV. So in the lungs, right, you have a ton of them, and in your intestines, you have a ton of them. And there's been a lot of speculation, even to this point in time. We know that infection with this virus can trigger really violent immune system problems. The cytokine storms, where an individual, their immune system becomes hyperactive but doesn't know what to do. And it's almost like the body rapidly becomes allergic to itself. And that's what leads to those really quick, sudden deaths that you see, where a person just falls in a street somewhere. Because I think at this point we've all seen, either in person or in video, one of those events. It's tied in with some of that, I think. Let me preface that. I'm not, this is way outside, way over my head. The science on that's way over my head, which is why I'm not. All right, let's see. Yeah, while it may be that they made a mistake on how long it lived, we knew it lived on surfaces in early Feb. So, February 7th. The analysis of 22 studies reveals that human viruses, the whole family, can persist on inanimate surfaces like metal, glass, or plastic for up to 9 days, and that's depending on the species, or whatever you'd call it, the mutation, but can be effectively inactivated by surface disinfection. So we knew that the virus was likely to live for a long time on surfaces. Regardless of how long that was, most of us, to be safe, we went with the 9-day mark. We now, I believe, have the specific information for this one, and I believe it's 3 days. But still, we knew that it could live on surfaces for a long time, because back at the time they were trying to tell everybody in the news that, oh no, it couldn't live on surfaces for more than a few minutes, maybe a few hours at most, and that just was not what we were seeing for actual real, what the experts and scientists were saying. They were not saying that. All right. While people who have been really looking into this have been aware of this, it needs to have more attention. This is a critical factor in how dangerous the virus really is. We need to be diligent with our precautions, i.e. washing hands, sanitizing surfaces. And this was the confirmation on February 8th. I don't want to turn the sound on because I'm afraid that it'll mess everything up. Hold on. Let's see what happens.
Symptomatic infection. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, hang on. See if this records properly. It's a short video, so if it doesn't, I'll know later, and I won't do it again, but...
I made a call to a person who I know very well, who's a highly respected scientist and public health official in China. And I said, it's important for us to get the answer to two important questions. A, is there asymptomatic infection? Absolutely, yes. B, can an asymptomatic person transmit it? Absolutely, we've seen it. It's not the predominant mode by any means. It's not driving the outbreak, but it occurs.
Now, what I want to make clear is that later we have learned, in fact, that yes, asymptomatic infection does drive a large portion of the pandemic. But regardless, neither here nor there. February 8th, okay, confirmed asymptomatic spread. We had the hardest time getting people to believe this, and crazily enough, got right into April. I believe there was a couple of public officials, I think one, I can't remember the location, but was saying that they'd never heard that before. Some reporter questioned them on the policies of them saying that people who'd had direct contact could go about their business if they didn't have symptoms. And the reporter, rightly so, said, don't you think that's really dangerous, considering the fact that a person can be infected and not know it and be spreading it while not knowing it? And the guy was just like, I've never heard that before. And it was mind-boggling because, again, we knew on February 8th, that you needed to quarantine the close contacts. You couldn't let them wander around. We knew that. February 8th. This is when I started looking into previous pandemics to get an idea of what we were going to be expecting out of this, because by this point, I knew that that's what was going to happen, just based on the fact of how many people left the area of original infection at the time. We're still in the first wave. People who are currently without symptoms are running around infectious. Now, I was speaking about China's first wave at this point. Just because the confirmed cases in your country are small, it does not mean that you should be lax about it. The way to stop the spread of the virus is literally in our hands. And this is because everyone was saying that transmission outside China is very limited, but it could accelerate. And of course, we know now that, in fact, yes, it was spreading in the community at the beginning of February. Absolutely. And probably well before it. Yeah, this was the point when I started helping people prepare for the coming quarantines and lockdowns, February 8th. Let's see, what was this based on? Keep calm, carry on, afraid of the big one, mixed messages, yeah, and debunking scary stories amplified by big name and big platform. What have we got here? Right, it was all the mixed messages everybody was getting, which was a totally fair statement to make. Because I had the time to devote into this and I knew what the virus could do and how it functioned, I was pretty sure I knew we were in some big trouble. But I could definitely understand anybody else. I mean, you usually have to rely on the news and your leaders to tell you the truth, and you have to go about your life expecting that when they tell you that you're not going to die from something and that you're not in any danger, that you are in fact not in danger. I mean, that's a pretty normal thing for a person to do. What we really need is a logical, measured message. And this is when I started pushing and sending messages to politicians and authorities and things like that, trying to tell them, like, hey, the public's really confused. Maybe you need to clear things up with them. A logical and measured message to properly prepare. People panic less when they feel you are being honest and when they have something to do. Don't encourage panic, but don't ask people to ignore the risk or suffering they are seeing in China. And yes, I did more than just tweet. I wrote letters and proposals and you name it, and sent them out to governors and news media and all sorts of things. It didn't help, but I tried. I tried really hard. Yeah. When they were hiding the early community spread. So this is February 9th. This is Florida. Yeah. Florida says it can't reveal. Oh, I was so mad. Me and a lot of other people were right through the roof. Florida says it cannot reveal information, but experts disagree. Florida Health says state law prevents them from telling the public about suspected cases of coronavirus. Oops, I'm not supposed to say the bad word. Yet the state regularly revealed that information during the Zika crisis 3 years ago. The state put out daily updates on the Zika virus, informing the public of suspected as well as confirmed cases. The law was the same then. U.S. Senate Rick Scott, who was Florida's governor at the time, said Florida should be as transparent now with this virus as it was with Zika. Scott is urging the same transparency for federal officials. Daniel's a lawyer and professional of complex health systems okay, we don't need to go through the whole thing. Point being, they were refusing to confirm or deny whether they had cases, which was kind of silly, because if you didn't have any cases, you would just say, we don't have any cases. So they might as well have just said it. The problem was, by refusing to release that openly, it could not be reported properly to people. They had a right to know if they were at risk or not. And that's what I'm saying here. Heck no. People have a right to know the level of risk. People closer to the virus clusters need to take extra precautions to avoid catching and spreading the virus. Keep the names private if you want, but people have a right to know if they're close to an outbreak. And I feel as strongly about that today as I did then. But again, wanting to know, how did we get to now, I think it hit like, it's either 76 or 78,000 dead in the US as of today. We lost thousands of people today, just to be clear. So if you're wanting to know, well, how the heck did this happen? Well, that's what this video is about. That's what we're doing. We are looking back exactly to see how did this happen. All right. Okay, so we had some wonderful people who were in China that got us original documents and translations for them and things along those lines, so that we could see the official words coming out of Chinese leaders. This is what China was saying. There are not enough masks, thermometers, disinfectants, and other plague prevention suppliers. We strongly recommend all businesses postpone their reopening time to no later than March 1st. So they were already in lockdown, as you remember. So this is what China's doing, right? But of course, they had a shortage. Well, if other countries buy the majority of their medical equipment from China and China itself has a shortage, again, I don't think you need to be that smart to put two and two together and see that we're going to be in very big trouble. One of the real issues with the outbreak of this new virus is that preparing for it was not built into the system, meaning we didn't have a big enough stockpile. Finding ways to treat and prevent it do no good if no one has access to the required materials. And that is particularly relevant, as again, for today's situation where we're talking about reopening and we're talking about, jumpstarting the economy back up. Meanwhile, we've got thousands dying a day and the infection rate keeps climbing higher, and we don't have access to the things that we need to do it in a safer manner. Again, this is why I did the research and got into making masks, specifically ones that work off an electrostatic filtration system. As opposed to mechanical filtration. You can see over here just a couple of my prototypes. My husband's a healthcare worker, and I'm making them for him, and I'm making them for his healthcare workers, or his healthcare co-workers, excuse me. Because, yeah, they're still wearing cloth masks, and the masks they were wearing were junk. No good at all, so I started making proper ones. Yeah, so this was February 9th when the death toll surpassed SARS. And my thinking at the time, I really hope people take this seriously enough before it's too late. We have a very small window of time to contain and prepare. If we miss it, it's gone, and the consequences could be lethal. It's more than just people getting sick. It's the lack of supplies and panic that can kill. That was February 9th. It can be a little difficult for me to go back, re-going through all this again. There was so much devastation and heartbreak, and I'm not including any of the horrific stuff in this video. I don't feel that other people need to see some of the things that I was seeing and having reported, because that's not the topic of the video, but it can be a little emotionally painful looking back at the time. I really believed that the response was just delayed. I really believed that, oh, well, if I'm I'll just try to remind everybody until the news and the government takes over, until they tell everybody all of this stuff and they tell them how to stay safe. And they get us the supplies we need. That's what I was thinking back then. I keep hearing rumors of outbreak clusters here in the US, but the official numbers are not being updated. Surely if things are moving this quickly in the UK, which at the time in the UK they were getting more cases showing up, it's doing something similar here. I'm more worried about what they don't tell us than what they do. When we first heard about pets being infected, and that was February 9th, I relate to this so much. I have been seeing pictures shared of beloved pets whose owners are trying to keep them safe from the virus. Even if pets can't get it, trying to keep your furry friends safe and by your side is something to understand. We all understand. Now, as you can clearly see, China had told everybody that pets could get the virus. However, the CDC contradicted that and said, no, that's not possible. Well, what do we now know today? Where are we? We are on May 7th. And just like with everything else we were told wasn't true, but really was. Yep, nope, pets can absolutely get it. Yes. February 9th, people. That's when we knew. That's when we knew. This is the big one. This is the really big one. February 9th, 2020. China tells the world that the virus is airborne. Don't bloody well tell me we didn't know. We did. Another confirmation, because there were multiple, of the virus being airborne. 3 modes of transmission. This is a far cry from just 2 weeks ago when we were told it couldn't be spread from person to person. China just confirmed it's airborne. Now has 3 modes of transmission. Oh boy. The deadly virus is airborne. Shanghai officials have confirmed. On Saturday, it was announced the virus can now spread via aerosol transmission, which is different than droplet. Meaning it can drift through the air for an extended period of time and cause infection if breathed in. By the way, that is outside that 6-foot rule. The 6-foot rule works for droplet. It has nothing to do with aerosol. Aerosol transmission refers to the mixture of the virus with droplets in the air to form aerosols that cause infection after inhalation. Some people tried to twist this to say, oh, well, see, they are just talking about droplet dispersion. No, droplet dispersion is a actual droplet of liquid as you cough or sneeze or talk that comes out. These viruses, they're clinging onto things much, 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 much tinier in the air to hold on to while they drift around. And of course, we've just had it finally confirmed that, yeah, it's absolutely airborne. And not only that, it lives in the air for 3 hours. So when did we actually know that? February 9th. We were told. And right around this same time, I'm going to just hope that the audio comes through okay. This is the World Health Organization telling us that the virus was airborne. It also is telling us that the virus is more dangerous than Ebola.
Ebola and this are not the same. Ebola is lousy. This is airborne. Corona is airborne. It's more contagious. And you have seen it, how it went into 24 countries, although it's small number of cases. In terms of potential to wreak havoc, the corona is very different from Ebola. Corona has more potency, virulence. We take it more seriously.
So I just want to make that clear, what everybody just heard. This was mid-February, World Health Organization, not only confirming that it is airborne, but confirming that this is a more serious situation than Ebola. Which obviously it was, because Ebola is not that infectious. What makes this virus so dangerous is that it has a low enough infectivity to not burn itself out, but it is highly contagious. Some people think that a low mortality rate on a virus, oh, that's a great thing, right? Isn't that better? Well, no, not always, because if you have a virus that is extremely lethal, it burns out of hosts very quickly, and they don't tend to be very contagious. For example, Ebola, it has to be direct body fluid transmission. It's not airborne. It doesn't live on surfaces, I don't believe. Things along those lines. It's a lot less contagious, and that is the case with pretty much any virus. This thing is lethal enough to do plenty of damage, but it is not lethal enough to burn itself out, and it is more contagious than the flu. And we knew February 9th. We knew. My first guide to emergency prep. This is when I started writing articles to try to help people. If you're interested in reading any of my articles, they're all on my website. They're all free to access, obviously. The address is www.trinitysurvivor.com. And you can check out any of my articles there. And I have infection prevention, infection control, decontamination procedures for coming in and out of the house for essential workers, and or if you have a vulnerable member at home. I have all kinds of articles on that. So, that 14-day quarantine thing was a problem. Because we already knew it could incubate further than that. A lot further than that. So here we are, February 10th. Who was I responding to? What's going on here? This is not the one that has the actual proof part of it, but you can see that I knew that at that point. 10 to 20 days. Turns out, we now know, anywhere before a person becomes symptomatic, anywhere from 5 days to 29 days. There was one case that went to 42 days, but whenever you're using statistics, you take an outlier like that and you remove it, because perhaps there was a problem with how she was being tracked or whatever, and that she became infected at a later time than they thought. However, that 14-day quarantine garbage was garbage then and will continue to be garbage because a person can be infected for 29 days, and it's happened here in the US, as you'll see eventually. Saying we knew everything we needed to know to stop this. We had all the data to tell us it was silently spreading in the US. Most people weren't told all this until March or even April. But if I knew, the authorities knew too. And this was me summarizing basically what I knew there. And it's February 10th. The virus is airborne. It's waterborne. It survives on surfaces for days. It is contagious long before the person gets sick and has an incubation period of up to weeks, not days. At this point, the people becoming sick now were exposed, and it could be up to 3 weeks can be the average. That's what it was. I believe that's the average we had at the time. I think now the average is more closer to 2 weeks, but still not the point. Its spread is silent until it's too late, and I really was pushing that to people. Hey, it's spreading inside the U.S. I have evidence to prove it. Take a look at all the people that left. Take a look at the virus's attributes. And they'd say, well, that's not proof it's spreading in the U.S. And it was like beating my head into a concrete wall. They wanted somebody in a position of authority to go tell them, yes, it's spreading in the U.S., which of course nobody was going to give them. But we had all the proof to know that that was in fact happening. Publicly available proof to know that that was in fact happening. And more proof continued to show up. Yeah, February 10th. It's a terrible feeling of inevitability to all this. From the beginning, it's felt like in one of my viral pandemic novels. The early lies down to downplaying by the press, the virus going airborne, all of it. Yeah, reading this now after more than 70,000 U.S. citizens are dead hits me right in the gut. Myself and others tried so hard to stop it. We sent messages and papers to every authority we could find. It did no good. My fears about the economy, February 11th. I'm very concerned for the global economy. People need to remember that there are wide-reaching consequences to a virus. I've been watching the artificial inflation of the stock market, and experts say it's doomed to crash. The world turns on Chinese good, and yeah, as we know, that prediction definitely came true. That happened. This was just talking about the outlier there, the one person that was reported to have been asymptomatic for 42 days before she got sick. Where are we? Oh, yeah, this was just another confirmation that the incubation period is longer than you expect. And that was based on absolute case studies. Like, we knew for a fact it could be longer than 14 days. February 11th, we were still using 14-day quarantines. Yes, that was heartbreaking. So, I showed you earlier where China told us that our cats and our dogs could get infected, right? I was very naive still back then. This situation has changed me greatly. I actually made a video about it. And you can kind of see who I used to be compared to who I am now, even looking back at these. The good news is the CDC has confirmed that cats and dogs can't get it, thankfully, and I believed them. I believed them then. And this is my thoughts about it now. Another fail for the CDC. They most certainly can get it. See what I mean? Every time we learn something, they would tell us it was a lie, only to find out later that it was in fact the truth. Every aspect of this virus, that's what happened. China told us the truth. Our own journalists and authorities told us it was a lie. And it turns out China told the truth. It was our people that lied, not them. And I'm not getting into the super early thing. Maybe that's not what this is about. This is not about blaming China or any of those things. The point I am making is that we knew everything we needed to know to take proper action to prevent. We could have contained this. We could have. At this point, by February 11th, we absolutely could have done aggressive testing, contact tracing, and isolated the contacts and the sick, and we could have absolutely burned this out. We absolutely could have done that. And we had all the information to be able to do it. Everything from knowing 14-day quarantine wasn't enough, to the fact that pets could get infected, to the fact that it spreads asymptomatically, the fact that it's airborne, the fact that it can live on surfaces for days, all of that I've already just showed you. Oh, sorry, notification. Hi, thank you, new subscriber. We knew. And there's more that we've learned since that, again, it's still being denied. And it's a problem. And when I'm looking at all of the people right now making the decisions they're poor decisions, I feel. They definitely are. To not wear a mask, to gather in large groups, to do all these things. But looking at all of this, do you blame them? I mean, most people weren't really introduced to this situation until well into March. They weren't back here when I was, okay? They didn't get to see all this, all of the lies and the fact that that China told us the truth, our own people lied, and then the truth came out later. They didn't see that pattern repeat over and over and over like we did. So I can understand why there's some problems. So here it is, publicly put out, February 11th. Incubation period could be up to 24 days. Infected people do not necessarily have a fever. And transmission through stool is now confirmed, February 11th. So we knew that temperature checks were not at all effective in screening people for the virus. That's what that's saying. Which, by the way, as of today, at my husband's place of work, which is a medical facility, they are still screening people by temperature. Let's just get that clear. They have cloth masks on that are not electrostatic like the ones I make. The material's not even good. It's like really low thread count stuff. That's what they've been given for masks, unless I make them for them, which I have been. And they're getting checked by temperature. That's what's happening on May 7th. So, this is me on February 11th, summing it up for people. Stool, contact, surfaces, airborne. These are all ways that it can be spread. Very few lethal viruses are as contagious as this. With being able to spread it without symptoms and an incubation of possibly up to 42 days, I hope everyone is finally paying attention. And that's another statement I made that, sitting here today, hits me in the gut. It absolutely rips my heart out. I really thought that things were going to go differently than they have. I mean, look at all this. We knew all of this, right? I figured, well, now they're going to give us this great plan, and they're going to tell us how we're going to get the personal protective equipment we need, and they're going to find all the infected people and quarantine them, and people are going to wash their hands, and they're going to wear masks, and That's what I thought on February 11th. That's what I thought. And I think if, as you're watching this, you can probably understand why I made that video. Maybe a week or two, oh no, 2 weeks ago, saying, how has this all changed me? I think that you're starting to get an idea of why it changed me. A small graph gives you a good idea of just how infectious it really is. It tracks transmission from a handful of cases to those they infect. So in this particular case, a single individual infected an entire dinner gathering in a single night, and this graph explains it. Which it's probably too small to see. It's too small for me to read it, but again, if you want to go through my Twitter history, again, I'll warn you, if you're trying to go all the way back to the bottom and you want to read every tweet since the beginning of this event, that's over 8,000 pieces of information. This is just a select few that I chose out to read because I don't use this account in a personal way. For me, it is an account that I use to archive data and to really kind of push proper precautions onto people and try to help people prepare for disaster and things along those lines. So yeah, but I did take all of the stuff you're seeing me go through tonight. I retweeted it to myself, so it's all kind of together closer up on my timeline. Yeah, so when I began to shift tactics, as I saw that the government was not going to contain this, I started a heavy push for people to get 4 weeks of food and sanitation supplies and stronger infection precautions. Absolutely, because I knew it was inevitable there would be lockdowns and quarantines, and people would need to stay inside and not go to the store. And he's saying, I'm going to be changing the way I share information today. At this point, the important thing to do is use sanitary precautions and be ready to shelter in place in case of local outbreak. I will share information I find relevant, but stick to the practical. This is very important information. It has been proven to be airborne. There are many infections that are suspected to have occurred. Oh, yeah, there are many infections that have been suspected to have occurred through central air. Be aware that it is possible to be infected through a ventilation system if shared by someone infected. And yes, they did. Beijing reported that to us. February 12th. The infection can be spread through the ventilator system. We had it, okay? February 12th. Airborne, goes through the air vents. 1,000 people told to self-quarantine in LA County who had recently been to China. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Well, as we all now know, we've seen it countless times. People don't really do too well when you tell them to self-quarantine. They go get their nails done and they break it and they go looking at houses and they go doing whatever they want. I mean, we've got several cases of actually infected individuals who knew they were infected, breaking their quarantine and going out. So I knew this was probably a disaster. And it was. February 12th. You can see me, this is the beginning of one of my many mental breakdowns over the course of all this. We are all so screwed. How can we contain the infection if we don't do anything to stop it? I've been tracking the virus almost since day one. Today is the first day that I am really starting to feel defeated. All we can do now is get supplies and try not to catch it ourselves. Yeah, I was starting to lose it, man. I knew it was coming. I knew we were going to have. We aren't anywhere near what the true damage of this is going to be. But I knew hundreds of thousands of infections were coming, which, by the way, we're over 1 million now. And I knew that tens of thousands of deaths, if not 100,000s of deaths, were coming imminently, very soon, within the next few months, kind of soon. I knew that. It was obvious. You just did the simple math about how many people die, what the average mortality rate seems to be. You take a look at what your estimated infection rate is. You take a look at how long it takes to die. You punch a couple of numbers, and you'll get an estimate. And I knew that estimate, and I knew that somebody else had to know that estimate. I made it using all of this information. All of the information I'm showing you guys was how I made those estimates. If I could make them, right? Reporters and people in charge can make them too. That's something I firmly believe. I'm not stating that there's a conspiracy. I'm not trying to say any specific person did or did not know something on any specific time period. What I'm saying is a general statement that if I, an uneducated nobody, knew all of this, it was publicly available, right? That it had to be obvious to at least some other people who were in news and in authoritative positions. And the fact that the narrative we're having now, we're seeing all these people chanting, China lied, people died. Well, I can't speak for maybe what they did in December, right? But by January 20th, they were telling us everything they had on the virus. They told us everything we needed to know well in time. And the messed up part, going through this, you can see the proof that they're not the ones that lied to you, okay? They didn't lie to you. Your media lied to you. Your politicians lied to you. Your authorities lied to you. Because you can want to run and hide from this all you want, but it's all here, man. It's all right here. It's all here. That's why I'm saying how important this video is. I'm very concerned with what I'm seeing with people. I'm very concerned with this sentiment of people wanting to go to war with China, and I'm very worried about the people that actually have done us harm, more harm, intentional harm, getting away with it scot-free. And you can make up your own mind. Like I said, that's the whole point of what I'm doing here. I'm showing you what we knew when we knew it. You can make the rest of the inferences from there. I'm not here to tell you what your political or ideological beliefs are. I'm just telling you what happened. I got a little bit behind here. Hang on. And I'm doing my best not to get emotional throughout any of this, but it is a very emotional thing. I don't show you guys the rough stuff, the really rough stuff that I've had to see and had contact with. I've had contacts, I've had people die, in not great ways. I've seen some pretty horrible things, so just kind of bear with me. I'll get over it. If you hear my voice break a little bit, don't mind. Yeah, the CDC's test. So February 12th, CDC sent out tests that didn't work. I'm pretty sure everybody knows about this. And this is already me starting to see that pattern of lies, mistakes, and incompetency. Tests for the virus sent out by CDC are flawed. This, on top of finding out that even the best tests have been getting false negatives, which to this day they still do. Why do we find another major lie or mistake every day? I'm starting to get frustrated. Yes, that's one way to put it. Yes. I'm just trying to get to the important stuff. Okay, this was period when I started trying to one-on-one really convince people that they needed to take some common sense precautions, such as buy extra food for lockdowns, wash their hands all the time, and wear masks if they're sick. That was it. That's what I was pushing, okay? At that time, I was not asking for anyone to change the pattern of their life, nothing. I was asking people to simply have a proper emergency plan that you would use for any disaster that anybody should have. And then to make sure that they had extra food in case they were locked down. That was it. And the level of resistance that I received was mind-boggling. It's still mind-boggling to me. So I was trying this tactic of taking on their arguments one-on-one. It turned out that was a pretty failed strategy, but not the point. That's where I was at here. I was responding to all sorts of people who did not believe me. Nobody thinks we should panic, but it would be unwise not to take the recommended precautions and have a few supplies to shelter in place in case of local outbreak. Only a fool sees something happening to someone else and decides it can never happen to them. Just be safe, okay? And that's something to know about me and my motivations through all of this, and you'll see this through all my work. my motivation, what I want, what I'm trying to get out of this is I am trying desperately to keep people alive. That's all I want. All I want is, back then it was for this pandemic not to happen. That's all I wanted. I just didn't want this. And I was willing to work as hard as I've ever worked in my life to do it. I built a website I've never built a website before. I have an 8th grade education, okay? That's it. And then I got a GED on my own. I'm dirt poor. I've never, I don't have experience in like big important fields. So I keep my advice like, I stay in my lane. All I wanted was for this not to happen because it didn't have to. And as I watched it unfold, and I continue to watch it unfold, like this has not changed. It's still like this today. I'm desperate. I'm desperate to help. Back then I wanted to stop the pandemic. Now, if I help just one person out of all of these months of work, out of all of the months of work to come, it's worth it. I genuinely believe that. That every single life matters. And I'm not gonna stop. No matter how hard it is or how hard it gets, I'm not gonna stop trying to help people. I'm not. Sorry. When I finally accepted we were on our own, and I ramped up my planning and long-term prep to share with others, situation is still the same. We have to beat this virus ourselves and all the issues around it. You've seen probably on my channel, if you're a subscriber of mine, I'm teaching people how to hatch chicks. I'm teaching people how to make electrostatic filter masks, which, by the way, making them like that, whether you make one or buy one that is made of the 100% silk on the outside, 100% very high quality cotton on the inside. Instead of working through mechanical filtration, they work through something called electrostatic filtration. The soft, fuzzy cotton rubs against the back of the silk, creating a mild electrical charge. And that's what filters it. You can actually look it up. There's tons of scientific information. They've proved that it works with the masks as long as they're worn correctly, which means you've got a good seal on it. I'm going to be going into actual production, making these soon. I'm currently doing my husband's coworkers right now, but I am going to start taking a few orders. I've already got a bunch of people that have sent me messages that want some, so I apologize. It's going to be slow. I'm not doing this because I want to get rich or anything, obviously. But people need good masks, and they need good masks that will last them, that they don't have to throw away and then go buy more of. So I never dreamed of being in the mask making industry, but it's where I've decided I had to go. As I said a little bit earlier, all my actions are guided by a single motivation. Every decision I make, everything I do, it is that every human life saved is worth an infinite amount. I believe that each one of us is worth an infinite amount. Each person is their own universe. That's what I believe and how I see it. And me saying we need to watch out for each other, take care of each other, be good to each other. Share our information, pool all our information. I've been putting out disaster prep info, virus news for over a week now. I'm disabled, so I have time to dig through it. If we wait for the government to do it, we're screwed. And that is true. I've got an autoimmune condition as well as a very damaged spine. I actually had to have another MRI today. I've had several surgeries already, but a lot of the physical activity I've been having to do seems to have jarred something loose in there. I was an Uber driver because that was a job I could do. I could do like 4 to 6 hour shifts. Before all this, obviously, being immunocompromised, I had to stop as soon as I learned about the virus. So I felt like, because I had the time to sort through all of this data, right, that I had an obligation to do so. Because other people, they couldn't do that. They've got little kids running around. They're going to work. Like, they don't have time. They need to be able to watch the news and find out the valuable information in a half-hour period of each day and go on with their lives. And I was seeing that that wasn't happening, so I started doing it myself. Yeah, and this is when the stocks started to a new huge jump in infection, death, stocks begin to tumble. Yeah. Is everybody paying attention? Good. It's vital that everyone takes sanitary precautions. You need enough food and med supplies for several weeks in case you have to shelter in place due to a local outbreak. The time for denial is over. Stay calm and prepared. Oh, you poor naive thing. I really did. I thought that once we started seeing American casualties, like lots of them, 100, I thought as soon as we hit maybe like 100 deaths, everybody will snap out of it and everybody will be paying attention. That's what I thought back then. I actually thought that. Yeah, I did. That was just me responding to somebody. Let me filter through. Yeah. This is current. A lot of people don't understand that the biggest risk isn't the number an outbreak kills. It's overwhelming of healthcare and breakdown of supply chains. If you can get people to have what they will need for even a few weeks, you can reduce the chaos. That was my whole strategy back then. And me saying today, and this fact remains, as people refuse to wear masks or stay in, the risk of overrun healthcare gets greater and greater by the week. And it does. Because the death rate's rising, and you can cherry pick that data and say, well, it's going down over here for the last couple of days, or blah, blah, blah. No, that is not, no. Look at the country as a total. Look at the trend, okay? Don't cherry pick, don't hyper-focus, pull back, look at the entire country, because we are all in the same country. I know that we've been being treated like and feeling like each state is its own little country, but that's not true. We are brothers and sisters from California to New York City. All of us. Those numbers matter. That big number matters. That is all of us. I'm hoping the individual prep can fill in the gap between an outbreak and the arrival of large-scale help. Oh, God. In a large outbreak, no one can expect them to be everywhere at once. Add to that the fact that they are under-provisioned and people could be waiting a while. And, yeah, my response last night. I was really naive. I thought the response was just a little slow. I thought that I was just helping to buy time until government got its crap together. I never saw the way this has been handled and treated by people coming. Sad that person is now gone forever. Oh, this is a response, but this is in regards. Okay, so, and maybe the article is in up here. Let me take a look. This was wild. Blew my mind. That's the flawed ones. No, it's not in here. It doesn't look like. What happened? A woman was released from a quarantine due to a labeling error, right? That's some good quality control. So you got a lethal virus. You're testing for it, right? It's that important to get this right. And you switch the labels and you let the infected person go and you keep the uninfected one. Well, that happened. And, I mean, they found the person and brought her back. And, of course, at the time, though, they were just throwing all these people in together, mind you. So if somebody was infected, like, then they'd take them out of the group. Are you kidding me? Like, you're contagious before you have symptoms, and there's a bunch of false negative tests. If you quarantine these people into just big groups together, well, they're all going to get sick. If one's sick, they're all sick. Like, again, not big brain thinking here. Like, really not big brain. This is what worries me. Forget the death rate for a minute. People are sick for a long time, contagious for longer. How will a complex society cope with that when no one can work either because they are sick or afraid of infection for so damned long? February 12th. That was my biggest concern, and yeah, that was accurate. Definitely. Yeah, okay. This is the base where the person infected was accidentally released. The current status of the situation is unknown, whatever that meant. Be prepared for local outbreak. List of prep tips and precautions are on my Twitter page. This is Northern California, Travis Air Force Base, I believe. Ugh, I've got a kitty trying to climb all into my stuff over here. But yeah. So, yeah, so that was that quote-unquote labeling error. Excuse me, guys, I gotta move a fluff ball. I love you too, Bubby, but I can't have you in my lap right now because I need to use my arms. There's not enough room. Yeah, there's not enough room. Here. Yeah. Alright, down you go, Bubba. Oh, he's so cute. Alright, where are we? Yep, February 13th, the day I created my website. Shortly thereafter, I started the Working on Coronavirus Journal, where I keep all my personal thoughts as things take place and continue. I haven't had time to write in it as much lately due to all of the activities between making masks, raising chicks. I'm clearing my land, I'm building gardens, so I haven't had as much time to write, but I do try to keep coming back to it and keep putting my thoughts down about things. And I have a ton of articles on the page. Ton of them. Oh, yeah. Again, that hurts to read. February 13th. This is the most disturbing thing I've seen today. Our first responders and nurses are not being prepared. What the hell is going on? We have thousands in quarantine and 14 confirmed cases. It's entirely possible that many more are incubating. And yeah, So I felt I had to share a conversation between myself, a nurse practitioner, and a good friend of mine, also a nurse practitioner who works at the hospital, and her husband is a fireman. This is scary to me. Precaution is supposed to happen before cases arrive. So what this does is it proves, and I can tell you, you'll be able to find people that can tell you personally they know, we didn't warn our first responders and emergency rooms. And it's no better now. Ask anybody that's had to go through trying to get tested or treated. There's no universal protocols. Like, they have not, it's not like the CDC or the federal government says, hey, we have, like, you know, these directors of medicine who have said this is the safest, this is the protocol you're supposed to use when doing this, this, and this, and all of these people need to go into training on the proper wearing of personal protective equipment, and they need to go to a training class on what the, you know, symptoms are, blah, 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 and be prepared. No. Zero of that happened. Zero. And it still hasn't happened. So this is a conversation between two nurses. This is like SARS, avian flu, etc. It is not a pandemic. You are putting way too much thought into this. Now, this is a nurse, okay? Hear me out, though. SARS and avian flu had very little person-to-person contact and even less transmission to those who had not been in heavily affected areas. But this one has a 14-day incubation, which is what people were still being told, but it was much more. Incubation and transmissible within this period. SARS had a 7-day incubation and was not contagious during it. Plus, the R0 is much higher. I'm not panicking or anything. I just want to have info and think it through. I actually think they will label it pandemic soon based on case progressions and the transmission of other countries. Again, this is an ER nurse, okay? Again, I'm not concerned, and none of my colleagues are either. My husband works for hazmat and fire departments, and they're not taking extra precautions either. So I disagree. This nurse, I think they should be, but I guess time will tell. And Tommy would transport any Ebola and such things as that. Ebola has a higher GFR, but way lower R0, which means transmissibility. Airborne spreads much more readily. Just my thoughts, not disagreeing. I'm just saying they have no extra precautions and they managed, and they're trained for this type of situation. Again, the media creates pandemonium. I have spoken with no one in the upper hierarchy that is concerned. What she's saying is, right, her superiors at the hospital, right, the people who run the hospitals were not concerned. You get that? You getting that? Yes, I don't think they need them now, but I think they will soon. Smart nurse. CDC has proven guidance to HC workers, healthcare. My staff carry a mask not for themselves, but because CDC guidelines are to apply the mask to the patient with symptoms. I'm not following media. It's my own research, same as me. I get blamed by people all the time saying that I've been brainwashed by this or that news outlet. I don't have a TV. Number one, I don't have cable. Number two, the type of things I watch are like YouTube videos of people playing video games. When I'm not doing that, I have my head stuck in research or a book somewhere. So my opinions that I form are completely my own based on the situations I'm seeing. I do not get them from other people. And of course, my staff are in the field. And I think that's the end of it. Look at that. February 13th, right? That was painful to read. That was really painful to read. They didn't warn them. And they thought that because no one warned them that there was no risk. And unfortunately, that same line of thinking is still happening today. Because the people that matter, there is no one message, one uniform front for the people to see. Like the government and the media and the authorities, they have not formed a united front. They're all telling everybody different things at different levels with different garbage. And people can just pick and choose what they want to believe based on what lines up with what they already wanted to believe anyway. That is the fault of the leader, not the fault of the people. Now, at this stage of the game, when we've got 76,000 dead, people that are still calling it a hoax and they're saying the numbers are inflated or whatever, I'm not very happy with them right now. But given all of this in the past, I mean, you can see the groundwork being laid for how this happened. Like, that's the whole point of this video. How did we get here? How did we get to 76,000 bodies? How did that happen in the US? How did the richest nation in the world, with considered one of the best healthcare that you could get, I didn't say healthcare systems, I said healthcare you can get if you've got money, but how did that happen here? Well, this is how. I want to point out something to you guys. This is Worldometer. They keep live time tracking of all sorts of things. And in this case, the virus. Worldwide. Almost 4 million cases and 270,000 dead. Recovered is only 1 million. By the way, when you're calculating how deadly something is, you have to look at the cases that have resolved. So these two numbers, right? This number here and this number here. The number of infected up here is not important because their outcome hasn't come yet. We don't know. They could still die. They could recover. What you do is, because it takes roughly the same amount of time to recover as it does to die. So, and because we've been counting these numbers all over the world, it's a huge sample size. So the statistical anomalies are going to be a little lower. And yeah, so those are the numbers you want to use. Let's just take a look. Let's see where the great US of A is at compared to others. Stop rubbing everything. You probably hear my cat purring through the computer. USA, total cases, 1.2 million. New cases, that means as of today, by the way, we got 27,000 new cases today, people. 27,000 people tested positive today. Today. Total dead, 76,000. Dead today, over 2,000 people died today. The next, as you go through, you'll see, you know, UK, they're starting to get up there. Let's see. Brazil makes sense. They've been ignoring things. Canada's at 176 today. All these are pretty small. Certainly, I'm not seeing any more in the thousands. So, I want you to look See, viruses do what they do unless human intervention changes their course. These numbers reflect what we're doing, okay? We are doing very poorly. I am not here to tell you who to blame. I am not here to make your mind up for you about what to do or any of the rest. But I'm here to show you the hard proof. The U.S. is in incredible danger. We are in incredible danger. And we are so far behind every other country. I mean, I guess when we say, you know, America the Great, we're not supposed to be great at dying and getting infected. But that seems to be what we've done. Absolutely. Especially when I'm looking at the new cases, you know. Russia, they just started peaking. They just started climbing up there. Brazil makes sense. They've been ignoring it. 27,000 in a day. And that's just what we caught, okay? Let's be clear about that. That's just the ones we found. All right. Oops, wrong one. So let's kind of skim through to see the next important things. Okay, this was important. This was February 13th. This was the CDC briefing the Senate, telling them that we had hundreds of thousands of cases coming in. We had a lot more than that.
I think that we are far in the United States. I think we have to plan for something larger.
And what would that look like? When you say larger, you mean what potentially?
I think that we have to plan for the possibility that we have thousands of cases. In the schools of public health, they often train us to look at the data that you've been provided, assume that you don't have the data, even here in the United States. You don't have a comprehensive set of data, and then multiply. So we're often taught to multiply by 7 or 8 times what you've been told. For every one case you see, there are 7 or 8 out there that you don't. So that means actually we'd be looking at hundreds of thousands of cases. I think we've been seeing thus far in the United States. I think we have.
This is incredibly important because this applies as much today as it did then. What the CDC and any other health agency has been trained to do since forever is to look at the numbers you're given, assume you didn't catch them all, and multiply by 7 or 8, and assume that that is the number you really have. And I can tell you, based on looking at other causes of death, such as pneumonia, sudden cardiac event, flu-like illness, all of those charts, you can line those charts up to the previous 20 years, and sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better, but they follow a certain pattern. When you look at those charts for this year, the numbers, all of a sudden, in about mid-February, they just start on a trajectory right up the side of Mount Everest. In all of them. The number we have actually dead is much greater. We have proof. Those statistics, those counts, when you put all those things next to each other, we have hard proof that more than 67,000 or 76,000 people are dead. And yet we have people trying to tell you that the numbers are being artificially inflated. They are not. While, of course, there are going to be, a couple dozen over here, a few anomaly cases over there that accidentally get added in. The numbers that are not being counted are so large. And let's just take a thought exercise for a moment, right? If somebody told you that there were 76,000 zombies wandering around the US right now, right? No, those are already the ones you put down. Let's go the other direction. That there were 1.2 million zombies wandering around the US. What would you do? What would you do? How would you act about that? Well, you would probably demand that somebody deal with it, and you probably would stay inside until all the zombies were gone and the risk of infection was gone. That's what you would do. If you were told that there were 1.2 million zombies out there, you would act very different. So why are you acting different now? You have a lethal pathogen, something that can kill young and old. We still don't even know what the real percentage is of how many people who get it actually are going to die. We won't know that for years to come because the data jumps all over the place. So think about that for yourself on your own. If you could see it with your two eyeballs, because I think that's a problem. People can't see a virus, right? And we take the sick and we put them in hospitals so they're not seen on the streets. But imagine it in a way that you could see it physically. That if you had 1.2 million potential points of zombie virus infection walking around, what would you do? Now, of course, I'm being exaggerative to make a point. I am not by any means saying that this virus is as lethal as a fake zombie plague. That is not what I'm saying at all. So do not take me out of context. What I am saying is that you would behave much differently if you were able to take these numbers and make them real to you. And I think that's what pushes me so hard to do what I do. Because to me, these aren't numbers. These are not numbers. There's people. They're people you know. I want you to look around you. I want you to look around your town and your closest friends and family. And I want you to ask yourself, how many of them are you okay with dying? If the answer is none of them, then you need to take proper precautions. You need to be meticulous about your infection prevention, and you and everybody else in your community needs to do it too. This only works if we all do it. Because it's bad, but we could still save so many lives. We could save so many more. This does not have to keep going this way, but if it does, let me put it to you this way. I've taken you back to my words, my thoughts, as situations happened. You've gotten to see my predictions as I made them. I wasn't wrong. So why would I suddenly be wrong now? If we don't do something, if we don't get everybody to cooperate and to make high quality masks and get them on everybody and to make enough alcohol and get little spray bottles of it into every pocket and get people to use it liberally, if we don't do that, we are going to lose everything. The economy is already tanked. We're going to suffer horribly for years and years and years anyway. If we don't do something drastic now, I doubt that the United States as we know it will continue to exist. That is my fear that I do not want to see happen, just like way back in these tweets saying, please, when I begged people, please listen to me. I don't want this pandemic to happen. I don't want to see 76,000 people dead by May 7th. I begged and I begged and I begged. And I'm begging now. You can see the trend by going back. That's why I made this video. I'm hoping that by people being able to have some context, by being able to see the early events, that they will understand the situation in a way that they did not previously understand it. If you're just getting your news about this through news, you don't know what's happening. And I'm really hoping that this can help people understand how dire the situation is. And of course, think about everything I just told you. Now imagine if you knew this back when all this was happening. You might have acted very differently. I'm I'm sure many people would have, but the fact is you didn't know. Yeah, you do realize that, oh, I'm responding to somebody about something. What's going on? Breaking, UK locks down 8 planes suspected. It's not breaking, it's over already. Some people had to sit on planes for a half hour, maybe 2. Big wow. That's the attitude. Real cute, right? Great attitude. You do realize that it is irrelevant if true. All I want is for people to take extra sanitary precautions and have a few extra weeks of food in case of emergency. You need to have that anyway. I don't understand people and the way they're acting. I really don't. She says, well, that's sensible enough. It's just some of the coverage is so hysterical, I think. It could cause backlash. No, the coverage was not hysterical. It was downplayed to you. It was the opposite of hysterical. You were not being told just how bad it actually was. And you can see that now by going back through history. Learn from history so you don't keep repeating it. That's what this video is about. And this, I took on a period through here. I was really losing it. I'll be totally fair, totally honest. I was really mentally struggling. I was frustrated. I was angry. And I really lost focus for a little while. I shouldn't have to waste hours a day on trying to win people over and tell them the basic facts. That wasn't my job. I'm supposed to take the data given to me and write easy-to-follow guides for people. Instead, I spend the majority of my time just trying to make people listen. And unfortunately, that is something that is continuing to happen to this day. Yeah, this one sticks with me. It stays with me. When I think back about a person that, or an interaction that's been had with somebody that really did not want to hear what I had to tell them, this is the one that comes to my mind. And this is me telling somebody who's been a friend of mine through all this since the beginning. We had a guy last night, worst so far. He said it was fine because Who Said So 2 weeks ago. Got nasty. So I sent him the new report from Who's director and the CDC Senate briefing, which I just showed you guys. Both warning to brace for massive numbers. He started saying, stop, 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 shut up, shut up. It was wild, and it kept on going. The guy sent probably like 8 messages worth. You could almost imagine the person with their hands over their ears screaming, la, 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 as it went on. And that, I wonder about that guy now. After that interaction, now that we now have 76,000 dead, I wonder what that's like for him. I feel really bad for people like that, honestly. I really do. That is something that they are going to have to live with for the rest of their lives. Knowing that they ignored something that cost so many lives. And that is still the case with people ignoring it now. I genuinely feel very bad for them, and it's going to cause a lot of damage in the long run. Humans aren't built for that, you know? That kind of guilt. Yeah, February 14th, they still wouldn't test sick people unless they'd been to China. So, and the worst part is, it was like cyclical reasoning. So, because we wouldn't test anybody, we had no cases to report, right? But because we had no cases to report, there was no reason to worry and no reason to do anything. But we didn't have any cases because we didn't test them. And around and around and around it went for quite some time. Me trying to explain to somebody about all the people that left because this person wanted proof that the infection was spreading all around the US and around the world. They didn't believe me. I said the proof is right here. 10 million people, which it turned out to be about 10 million, flew in and out from Wuhan itself between December 1st and when the city was locked down. It was the holiday season. No wonder the CDC briefed the US Senate to prepare for hundreds of thousands of cases. And that happened a lot. People would be like, you need to prove to me that it's spreading in the US. So I would show them the proof of the people from Wuhan since the outbreak, you know, where they went. And they're like, well, that's not proof. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not proof? That's insane. Sorry about all the background noise, people. Oh, yeah. Explain to somebody why it was a problem. Sorry, I got lost there for a second. No vaccine, no natural immunity. The risk is in the initial outbreak overrunning healthcare. That's what I thought at the time. I now realize things were more spread out and more complicated than I originally realized. And breaking supply chains, which that absolutely has happened. People run out of supplies. If they don't have health care, chaos can break out after. Yes, it will likely be seasonable and manageable. That was kind of the narrative everybody was being told at the time. We now know, of course, that what we're seeing is because different places have had different levels of response. It's not going down in a predictable, even fashion. So you see some places have these overwhelming, and their hospitals get overwhelmed, like happened in New York City and is beginning to happen in Georgia and several other cities. But in other places, like here in Vermont, we hardly have anything going on. So it's much more complicated in the U.S. than what I had originally expected. I didn't think about that factor. I was planning on a universal response. I thought that the federal government was going to create like a federal guideline for all the states to follow, and that didn't happen. So that's why I was expecting something very different. This is why we need to have a month supply on hand to bridge the gap. Yeah, I went through that. Me writing articles. Now I'm kind of skimming through trying to find the next. Okay, here we go. Nebraska. A person from Nebraska U.S. quarantine site has developed symptoms and is now being tested for the virus. They will be separated from the other 57. And what a mess. Too late. You had them all together. If one has it, most of them do. And they did. You can watch that as time goes on. Why would you do that? Why would you take a bunch of people that only possibly had contact and stick them all together like that? Because if even one's infected, now all of them are infected. It's not a great plan. It's not a plan at all. Yeah, this was critical. It was the first real proof that it was in Hawaii, either brought there by the tourists or caught there. They didn't even try, really, to contact trace this. They put out a phone number so anyone who felt sick after being there at the same time could call. Me ready. And it keeps spreading. A man returns to Japan and is confirmed to have the virus. He was in Hawaii from 1/28 to 2/7 and started getting sick around the end of the visit. So it's in Hawaii. Those people on his plane, and who knows where all those people went. Oh, yeah, that was just, again, you're seeing me kind of losing it in those days. Yeah, no one is even looking for the infections. Right. Let's see, this is another this is the same person from before talking to their nurse friend again, who still didn't believe them. Oh, this is the second half of the conversation, I see. I would do that more for the flu, which is a more likely source, and the hospitals do that for flu, not for this virus. They are doing it for flu if they are following the new CDC guidelines. They instruct to mask, then isolate them, and then call the reporting number for this. Yes, they do it for flu. Again, I'm not concerned. And no, you don't do that for flu. I have an autoimmune disorder. I get flu all the time. Trust me, that's not how they handle that. Yes, but I'm saying there are special guidelines now for this virus. Okay, I think any virus that has gone from 50 to 60,000 cases in less than a month should be concerning, especially if we are seeing person-to-person contact in the U.S. Contact transmission. And the other nurse's response was just, okay. Wonderful. That was February 13th. February 15th. Many people from all over the world, from different backgrounds, are coming to the same conclusions, so we decided to take it on ourselves. My job is to inform the need to know and instructions to as many as I can while there is still time. Help as many as I can. And yes, many of the other people that I got involved with in this, they doctors, scientists, all of kinds of people. One of them has been working with the investing that is involved with several of the vaccine attempts. People from all over the world, from all different backgrounds have been working together, and I've been blessed to get to know some of these people. Yeah, things that start as rumor and you get hit hard if you say anything. They cried misinformation and fear-mongering, going as far as to ban people on social media and even limit the search engines. But day by day, fake news turned to might be true, turned to fact over and over again. And you are just seeing that now with finding out the pets get infected. Well, you saw it all the way back down in there. So I'm trying to just get through the basic. We've pretty much covered. Oh, yeah. This is the proof. This has to do with the fact that flu masking, just like I was talking about the other masking of cardiac and pneumonia and whatever, we knew that it was spreading in the U.S. based on our flu data. And I can show you what I meant by not fitting the pattern, right? So you'll notice sometimes it starts a little sooner, sometimes it starts a little later, but it always has this up, down, up, like this, to a certain degree. Well, this one went up, then dropped way down. See, once it does the big drop, it's kind of supposed to stay that way. Now, this number right here, this was early data, but it was already an anomaly. The first hump shouldn't be that high, okay? You see that? See where all the other first bumps are? They're all way down here. This one went down, which was probably flu season starting to end. Then it started to go back up. And if you were to look at those today, you'd see it go way the heck up. I keep pointing at my screen like you can see my fingers. Yeah, okay, sure. But that data didn't look right. We could tell something was in it. We didn't know how much, but we could tell it didn't look right. So the good news is pets can't get it. Yeah, and me saying, oh, I messed that one up. I trusted the CDC and it bit me in the ass. That's exactly what happened, yes. Me realizing that our medical workers were about to get hit hard without PPE for treating. Yep. The infection risk cannot be overstated. If medical workers do not have top-of-the-line protective equipment, they will get infected. How to fight an outbreak if all the caregivers are sick? Yep. And we now know that thousands and thousands and thousands of our caregivers have become ill. When I started breaking into more, detailed emergency preparation stuff to make sure people had their nutritional needs met if they were locking down for long periods of time, that's what some of that was about. Letting you know how much protein you need every day, how much fat, how much carb, that kind of thing. This blew me away. This didn't happen in the U.S. It was in Cambodia. The Cambodian Incident, yeah. So they had a ship, another cruise ship that was suspected infected, turned away from a bunch of ports. Cambodia, I don't know why the leader in Cambodia decided to do this. He decided to welcome them with open arms. I think he was trying to basically rub it in the faces of other countries, saying, see, we're much more civilized and compassionate than you are. He let all the people off the boat without any quarantining or personal protective equipment, personally shook a bunch of their hands, and of course got infected later. He did not make these people stay put. And they wound up going all over the place. And then there it is. That was the beginning of finding out what a mistake that was. An American on the ship that disembarked in Cambodia was just diagnosed. So that was February 15th. And all those people went all over the place. Yet again, another incident of dispersion all over the world. People going home. Somebody had been saying to me that this is just a China problem. It's not an us problem. We don't have infections in the U.S. So me saying this won't be a China problem for soon. The majority of the world's medical supplies, including protective gear, is made there. Same with most drugs and their components. The supply chain has almost ground to a halt. With ever-increasing demand, there's going to be a problem, which, yes, we are now feeling that problem. Yeah, the 14-day quarantine. I keep telling people a 14-day quarantine and a negative test are not enough. This virus likes to hide. And I showed you way before this date that yes, in fact, we knew 14 days was not enough and that we had a lot of false negative tests. trying to get people to stop drinking colloidal silver, and the one that really got to me was the people that decided to put it in their nebulizers and start inhaling it. You heard me correctly, inhaling metal. They are inhaling metal to try to stave off an infection from a virus. Yeah, this was somebody not believing me that I knew the virus was in the US. He asked for proof. I gave it to him, showed him the confirmed tracking of just 60,000 via cell phone to where they went. He's like, that's not proof. I didn't, what else do you give people? I don't know. I don't know what I could have done differently. He's starting the journal. The false negatives. People that didn't show symptoms for 24 days. Oh, yeah, this mess. Breaking: Americans confirmed to have the virus rises to 46 out of 356 cases on Diamond Princess. They told us the infected would stay in Japan. Does everybody remember that? And does everybody also remember that that's not what happened, and that a couple lied about their status as uninfected to get home and then turned out to be infected? Because I remember that. I remember. If people had all the data of them in front of them and someone to help them understand what it means, it's all there. Anyway, that's my job on this project. It's bad, really bad. People should not panic, but they need to be prepared to protect themselves. And honestly, from this point forward, I mean, I think you guys all get the point, right? We're only to February 16th, and we already knew everything that you know today about the virus. We already knew it. All of it. All the pertinent data. First half of February, and even before that. We had it. Hard data. All of it. And then pretty much it just kept proceeding from there. Me trying different strategies and proposals and methods to try and get this dealt with before before the large amounts of bodies started to drop. That's mostly what February and early March were for me. Just similar stuff, me repeating myself like a broken record. I'm going to just more look for... I'm looking to see if there's any new... Oh yeah, this is me talking about the inhaling the metal in the lungs. I'm never going to get over that. Okay, yeah, here it is. February 17th. Yep. 14 Americans evacuated from the cruise ship have tested positive for the coronavirus as they were boarding the chartered flight to the U.S., even though the American public was assured that nobody infected was going to be brought back here to risk the rest of us. Yeah, this is just showing what one of the virus wards looks like. Yeah, this has been a chronic issue. I had someone tell me that they were relieved by this, finding out that it is really hard on elderly patients and patients with existing conditions. I had someone tell me they were relieved by this, as if the elderly and sick people's lives were worth less than their own. I was absolutely shocked by it. Cancer patients and people with chronic illness, small children, and the elderly, their lives matter. Now, in this particular virus, we know that it does not hit the small children as hard. But then again, we're starting to get some new evidence saying that there is another issue, which we won't go into that with this video, but there is starting to be an issue with the children getting really violent gastrointestinal symptoms, and there's more and more of them that have been having to go into the ICU. There's not enough data for me to tell you if these are more or less isolated or what the risk factor is. I don't have enough data yet to be able to make any statement on it. It's important the public have context for the information they are given. They hear 2 to 3% mortality rate and they think, "Oh good, it's nothing to worry about." That is more than 20 times more deadly than the flu. Please wash hands often and disinfect frequently touched objects. Then again, fighting that flu narrative. This is not the flu. It is airborne viral pneumonia and puts 20% of the people in the ICU. It can overrun any healthcare system in the world and break the chain of essential supplies. Help prevent this by taking extra sanitary precautions. Link in my bio. Again, drug manufacturing should have never been allowed in China. Best to keep critical manufacturing at home or with trusted allies. Europe braces for coronavirus-induced drug shortages. And me just mentioning it. Dr. Eric, he's great. Even with protective gear, on Friday, a fire department employee who had helped with patient transport from Diamond Princess cruise ship quarantine in Yokohama tested positive despite having worn protective gear. It probably just means, now that I'm more experienced, no, it probably just wasn't worn properly, or it was not fitted right, something along those lines. The infectivity of this virus cannot be overstated, and that is absolutely true. Social distancing, yeah, this is when I got out of social distancing, that's right, Feb 18th, is crucial, as well as sanitary precautions. It can spread in Western countries because people were saying that it could only spread in China to begin with, and then we pointed at the cruise ship and they went, well, it only spreads in China and cruise ships, and then it started spreading more in Europe, and they're like, well, it can only spread, and it just got weirder and weirder and weirder as it went on. It can spread in Western countries, and it will if everyone does not work together. Link in my bio for information on how you can help. And again, just to make that very clear, yes, it could, in fact, spread in the U.S. Very much so, and that has not changed today, even as we open up without taking the proper precautions. I understand that lockdowns cannot last forever. It's dangerous to try to do that, fine. But you have to do it safely. We don't have enough of the right kind of masks on people. We don't have them properly sanitizing things. And we have a ridiculously large portion of our population who is simply refusing to take any precautions at all. I'm going to tell you now, as I told these people way, way long ago, that you are going to see a massive wave of death. I would give it about, it's going to keep increasing, but I would say we're going to start hitting a really nasty spot in about 4 weeks. That is my rough estimate. As the lockdown ends, but people are refusing to use basic precautions, I predict to see a major, major, major spike. Oh, yeah, I've seen it in the US too, I think. Oh, wait, what is this? The only thing to fear is fear itself, not the virus. WHO repeatedly said that it does not recommend travel or trade restrictions on China. That's some disgusting crap. I've never said that China's innocent in any of this. I want to make that very clear. What I have made clear is that if you're gonna go about holding people responsible for their part in it, then you need to hold everybody who's guilty responsible, right? It's all or nothing. Otherwise, you're just singling out one of them and you're giving all the others a free pass, and that's not right or acceptable. People want so badly to put all of this death on China's doorstep while ignoring the fact what was done here in this country that has caused all these deaths as well. It is a joint effort. All of these people could not have died if the world hadn't worked together. God, that's a sad thought. All right. And this is when the price of the stock market crashed. So I'd predicted that about a week and a half before. I told you about that false inflation I was worried about, which you can see that right here. Very concerning. And then, poof, that's exactly what happened. Even with good tests, you still get some false negatives. That's the case even today. It's very hard to test for it, even in patients with severe symptoms. Clinical diagnosis in people who have had exposure and have pneumonia works but gets tricky when a person has had no known contact. It sparks concerns that they could be spreading undetected. And of course, as we know now, yeah, definitely was spreading undetected. Just more stuff on my website. Well, I think now the only thing to point out, I think it's time to get to the current day. I think it's time to take a look at what's changed and how did we learn from all of that I just showed you? What has been the lesson? Because you can see I've documented it well. It's all there with all the evidence and all the paperwork and all the proof and all the receipts and everything's right there. So, what does it look like right now? Well, we hear a lot of politics. That one's politics. That one's just sweet. Oh no. So, the remdesivir, I didn't cover it much in this video, or at all in this video. I do have it stored in my archive. We already tried remdesivir in China, back in February. We did large studies. It didn't work. The current study that is being used by everybody right now to say that they may have a breakthrough drug, you can look it up for yourself. Look up the study. It has 53 people, no control group, and 2/3 of them got better. Problem is that more than 2/3 of people get better on their own anyway. And you can see, if you really pay attention, all the news about the remdesivir, it all seems to be money related, isn't it? Breakout drug remdesivir, and its stocks have gone up nearly 20% since the start of the year. But there are questions from lawmakers and activists about whether and how much a company should be able to profit from a pandemic. Gee, that seems like an important question to ask. Absolutely. Here, why don't we take a moment here for me to hop over here and check in. I hardly have any viewers. It's very sad. Anybody who missed this, I'm gonna be, like I said, I'm gonna be editing it down, breaking it down into small portions as videos, which will be much easier for people to sit down and watch. We've got more of that. And Korea's done very well. Oklahoma City woman shot at 3 McDonald's employees after being told the dining area was closed. Yeah, we've been getting a ration of these too. A worker in a convenience store was recently shot because he told a woman she couldn't enter the store without a mask on. So, that's happening. So everything I just showed you, right? All the knowledge, all the data, all the death, and this is where we are. This is where we are. Las Vegas mayor who offered to reopen the city as a control group amid the pandemic faces recall effort. Yep. Basically wanted to offer her people up on a silver platter. Yeah, most coronavirus deaths. And the thing is, the U.S. is nowhere near the most populated country on Earth. Like, we're nowhere near it. We have 328 million people in our country. We have relatively low population compared to places like China and India. Yep, but we've got more than double, the next highest rate, which is the UK. And then you hit Italy, and then you hit Spain, and then you hit France, and then some of these countries are on their way up, and some are on their way down, and some of them probably shouldn't even believe the numbers you see, but it gives you a trending idea. This is wonderful. This is a piece of good news I want everybody to get to see here. Students turned graduation gowns into PPE to fight the virus. Yes, 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 yes. That's what we want, people. That's what we want to see. Okay, if the authorities, if the government, if the news, if they're not going to do it, we can do it for ourselves. That's what we'll do. We can do that. We absolutely can do that. Make masks and face shields and take precautions on our own without somebody having to tell us to do it. Last month, Georgia waived its road test requirement for most drivers in an effort to help fight the virus. This week, the state said it had issued driver's licenses to thousands of teenagers without one. I'm confused. Why would you do... Okay, I think it's time to wrap this video up. I think we all get the point. Draw whatever conclusions you would like to draw from the data that I've just given you. And I really genuinely hope that having this information can help you in some way move forward in a safe manner and a healthy manner. And I wish everyone to stay safe and healthy and happy. If you like my work, you can like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. Subscribing is a big, big, big help right now. All of the work that I do, obviously, I don't get paid for, but I can't get through to unemployment, and I also can't go to work. So I can't get any ad revenue, not that I'm probably going to get much anyway, until I reach 1,000 subscribers. So liking, sharing, subscribing, that really helps the channel. I'll also leave the link to my Patreon once the live stream has rendered and is up to watch. I'll put that in there. Yeah, and I'll see all you guys next time. Bye-bye.